Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it.
All right, camera time.
Bruce?
Lionel?
Bruce?
Lionel.
Bruce, I think I'm going to have to be heavily sedated for this one.
That's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? What's your choice of sedation? Single malt, some cider, or straight up gin and tonic? What do you prefer?
I don't know. I feel
Percocet or whatever the stuff they give you.
Percocet. Yeah,
Percocet.
Oxycontin. Yeah.
Oxycontin. Yeah, there you go.
This is the second part of our 37-part trilogy with Jack Trabachino. It's 4 syllables.
Yes.
Jack Trabachino. Dave?
Lionel.
I'm not sure you always pronounce that B clearly because until Jack actually I had it spelled out for me, I did not see that B in there in Trabachino. It was kind of like, of course, you're the New Jersey guy that talks fast.
I do talk quickly. I talk quickly even among Jersey people.
And it says Newark funny.
And you know what?
Newark.
I think it's
Newark.
Newark. That's like Norfolk, Nebraska is Norfolk.
Or Worcester, Mass.
Worcester,
yeah. Or you live in Lebanon, New Jersey, and yet Tom Jacobs, who lives just down the road from Lebanon.
Yeah, he doesn't live in Lebanon, Pennsylvania. He lives in Lebanon.
Yeah,
Lebanon.
yeah.
True.
Of course, it's Toronto, so I guess that's fair dues. So, Dave, I'm pretty exhausted still. It's been like 2 weeks since the last time we talked to Jack, and I'm still pretty exhausted.
Yeah, I'm exhausted too. I'm exhausted too.
I mean, that was a heart-wrenching story. The two of you being separated in grade 6.
I've always thought so, and it's actually interesting because Jack and I, so much of this is taken sort of in stride now over the years, and to talk about it in a long-form interview, which that's one of my favorite parts of the AML Nation is the ability to talk through some of these things and see where they go. Yeah. To hear Jack's thoughts on it have been really profound for me. I've actually been thinking a lot about it the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, my thought was that it's like the makings of a Hallmark movie for me.
Yeah, I know exactly. and
Bruce, isn't that our hobby in general? Isn't that model railroading like 101?
And we're not even 3 minutes in, and already he's telling us that it's been 30 years since the two of them talked the way they talked, and it's just now sinking in the impact it had. It's been 30 friggin' years. And now you're just, after the first interview, now you're just it's kind of emotional for you?
Well, no, it's been emotional the whole time, but you take a lot of that in stride because it was emotional at the start for both of us. And to hear Jack's reflection on these things, it's healthy stuff. It's good stuff.
So we're going to make the movie now. Who's going to play you and who's going to play Jack?
I think you two are going to play us.
No, not even close.
Well, it's going to be like Star Wars. We'll do the sequel first and then the prequel last.
No, the guy that plays you has got to be the guy. He's got to be some sort of a vanilla type actor. Nobody. Dave, you're kind of like I don't know. What's Kevin Bacon would be perfect for Dave.
Yeah, there you go. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Kevin Bacon's cool. I'm not cool.
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Right? I mean,
well, you have to have a little bit of artistic license, right?
Yeah, you got it.
You get Kevin Bacon in there, and he bring the chicks into the audience.
That's true. See that? Hey,
the women. He bring the women into the audience.
Yeah, the ladies.
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah, we apologize.
There'll be no foul involved in this movie.
Bruce, unbelievable. I don't know, man.
All right, let's get him in here. Dave, go get him out of the green room. Let's get this over with.
All right.
Just go get him.
Hello, Jack. Here we go.
Good evening.
All right.
Jack?
Yes.
Jack?
Jack, we had a question on the pronunciation of your name. It is Jack, correct?
Yeah.
That you have correct.
Perfect.
All right. Jack, put the microphone just a 1/64th of an inch closer to your mouth.
How's there?
No, that was two. That was
You did a 30-second.
Yeah, it was 1/32. I specifically asked for 1/64th.
Precision is a key thing.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, precision is a key thing. Yeah, exactly. It's like a precision. It's like our viewer mail, our introduction for viewer mail. It's a precise strike.
Yes, precision.
Precision.
What do we phrase?
No, we're batting 1,000 so far.
Precision military strike.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
Yes.
So Bruce, you had a great place to pick up. So last we left our heroes.
Yes,
they were skipping into the New Jersey Transit.
They got through the emotional breakup and heartbreak of being separated, and many years later,
yeah. And now tonight we find out that it's been 30 years since the two of them have really talked about it.
No.
Well, that's what you just said.
We can roll the tape if you want.
Yeah,
you are quite the interpolators, you two. This is like.
Okay. Do you want to take a break here, roll tape, and come back?
Yeah, exactly.
Roll the tape.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how my tone was different or something.
Yeah. You know what I took away from part 1 of the 37-part trilogy was I feel sorry now for Dave's kids.
Oh. Ooh.
because Dave's dad was a taskmaster. And Jack's parents were building him this palatial layout in his bedroom, and all Dave had was this little sheet of plywood down by the coal pile in the furnace in the basement, and they couldn't do anything until they cut like 5 acres of grass at Dave's house. And then Jack is like, he's had kind of like the Fantasy Island trip down model railroading, and Dave's been like, and now I've been thinking the whole time, Dave, don't be too hard on your kids.
That's actually good advice, and you aren't the first person to give me that advice, which is healthy. This is why we have wisdom keepers.
Yeah, don't be.
I think I told Dave's dad that he created a monster.
Oh, did you? Really?
I will never forget. That was at my dad's 70th birthday party. Yes, I will never forget that.
What did you say, Jack?
That was awesome. Jack gave
I told him that if he had just let Dave see the train that Dave could hear coming out of Pattenburg Tunnel instead of driving the car away, just those little bits of gratification would have gone a long way.
Well, so what's that story?
Well, here's another story coming up.
Yeah, I know. What's this story? Where's Pattenburg Tunnel?
This is years after we started working at Transit. So
okay, well, where's Pattenburg Tunnel?
I'm guessing in the ground, but where?
Yeah, I'm asking them.
Oh, it's actually not far from Dave. It's in northwestern New Jersey.
Time out. Is this the way this is going to be again? I said, is this Pattenburg Tunnel? And I'm getting death. And it's Bruce's
Milepost 64.
All right. On what railroad?
Lehigh Valley, Maine.
Okay. So what railroad was?
Currently the Norfolk Southern Lehigh line.
Okay. And what railroad was it when your dad drove away from it?
Conrail.
Okay. And how old were you?
That happened a bunch of times at different spots watching trains.
Time to go home.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, usually it would involve me, asking politely, "Look, Dad, the signal's green. We've been waiting here for half an hour. The dispatcher lined this on purpose. There's a train coming. All we have to do is wait a few more minutes, and we can see it." And he said, "Dave, we've already been waiting." And I said, "Dad, there's a train coming now." And David, we got to get home. We haven't cut any. We got stuff to do. I'm tired of waiting around here for a train that might not ever come. And I said, Dad, the train's coming. You don't know what you're talking about. You need to listen to me because the train is coming. And that was all it took.
And
so how long after you left did the train go by?
Oh yeah, we usually as we were pulling away, you could see it through the trees behind us.
But Jack mentioned this moment specifically. Was there something? Was that the time when you and your dad went your separate ways, or like why was that? Why Jack that particular moment?
Well, that was just that's really heart wrenching. As a kid, we only got to go out and see trains but so often, and here no one is coming, and it creates that it creates a lot of frustration, but it also creates a lot of motivation.
So were you there?
No, I was not there for that.
So then obviously there was this was happening in grade 5 or something. And Dave came as soon as he saw you. He went, "Oh, we were at Pattenburg Tunnel, and my dad left before the train, and I knew it was coming." It was something like that.
Oh yeah, I would have understood, the chain of events there.
Yeah, and this was actually that particular story was when my cousins were in town from Syracuse. Actually, it's the family we would stay with when I went up to Central New York. The opposite way. So they were down, and we went to the railroad tracks with a pack of cousins and my dad and my uncle Peter. Ironically, Peter and Peter. My dad was a Peter, and my uncle was a Peter as well. So we went to Pattenburg one time. The same thing happened at Manville a year before that. But in any case, the train's coming. Like again, it's centralized traffic control. There's no towers. There's no depot. There's no railroad workers to talk to find out what's going on. You have to pay attention to the signals and listen to a scanner, and wait and hope. And so we got tired of throwing rocks in the creek and. Yeah, the signal finally goes green after waiting for 2 hours. And then we're waiting another half an hour. And I said, oh, there's definitely a train coming. Well, when it went green, we're waiting. And so, Dad started to say, "Wait, come on, we got to get going. This is, enough is enough. We've had enough time here. We wasted the whole damn morning. We've been sitting here by the tracks." And it's funny because my dad, I miss him every day. He's a guy that was an absolute foundation of our community. He would give his shirt off his back to anybody, wise beyond his years in learning to talk to anybody from any culture, any situation, bottomless compassion for people that were disadvantaged or people that were handicapped by anything. A consummate teacher, Peace Corps volunteer. So somebody I really looked up to. But boy, when you had fun before you worked in any given day, like the inner farmer came out in my dad, and oh man, there was hell to pay. it was a quick, rash judgment. My buddy Heath Hoffmeister, who works with me at NJ Transit and has known Jack and I, he went to college with my brother. Heath was also at the same party that we're talking about, where Jack gave the speech that we're talking about, and Heath called. He said my dad was like something out of the Old Testament. He's like, you'd get greeted with purple-headed rage like something out of the Old Testament. That's how it was stated. And I thought that was one of the most apt descriptions of when my dad would blow his stack ever.
So really, we need to get your wife on here to find out what you do when you get mad. I got a feeling when you blow, it's probably everybody's, looking for cover under the kitchen table.
It's like Mamba Suvius or something.
Yeah, I know.
I have the capability of the Abelian capability of probably purple-headed rage like something out of the Old Testament.
So it's
rare. It's rare, but the ability is there.
Yeah, and
Jack has seen that a couple times between me and other people.
I got a feeling I'm going to be one of those people on the receiving end of that someday. He's going to be like, I just had enough of you. This is a great interview so far, don't you think, Jack?
Yeah, fantastic.
As we explore.
Oh, is Jack here?
Yeah.
I thought he'd gone somewhere.
You guys got to stop asking me questions about my dad. I want to talk more about.
Jack brought it up. Jack brought it up about how because that's what I remember. And then Jack goes, "Yeah, well, that's going to become like the Pattenburg Tunnel incident."
Yeah, the great Pattenburg Tunnel.
Yeah, the great Pattenburg Tunnel incident.
I guess the point
a Monday night mystery movie.
Yeah.
The point of that being that some people give up or their interests get diverted. I think it just provoked Dave to commit more to it, to commit more to either finding trains or seeing trains or seeking out that passion. And, that's what, the real roots of the Onondaga Cutoff are, I think, is still trying to, seek and find that same passion that was out there. And, if you get gratified too many times, it just kind of becomes, ho-hum, you feel like, oh, I've seen it, I've done it, I remember it. You don't feel like, I think there's kind of a sense of maybe, it becomes a little melancholy because you feel like, okay, there's a sense of loss that underlies, not just maybe the Onondaga Cutoff, but all of model railroading. You lost this thing, the reality of this thing that you remember. and that you hold really dear. So, I think what those little experiences, made seeing a train a rare and special thing, and made it, something that was connected with, the loss of a potential experience.
And who's the dispatcher on the OC?
There's something that goes out there to, that I think motivated the creation of the Onondaga Cutoff that, it gets Dave going the whole extra mile to recreate the exact experience.
Yeah.
Because that experience was made so rare and special by those sort of denials.
Right. Give it up, Bruce.
Okay. I was going to ask, who's the dispatcher on the OC?
Well, anyone can be the dispatcher on the OC.
Okay. The next session, here's what you do. Have them line up with a group with a green signal and never send a train.
Yeah.
It'll drive Dave nuts.
Well, now it's nice being the general manager because I can walk over and be like, "Hey, what's going on here?"
Well, nothing.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you
right.
have to have a lot of people in on that joke.
Well, that's
I've always valued that though, Jack. That's an interesting point that I've never really. This is the first time I think that I've heard you put it that completely, because I don't think it's an angry thing or a sense of loss that is the sole motivator for anything that goes on that's positive in life necessarily. Certainly not the OC, but I think that there's a color to it, a color to the passion that created the OC and what the operating experience is, which of course, as we talked about, is as much you and Rich as it is me. I just remember with a passion, and this is what I think you're saying to me, is that some of the passion that I felt when we went trackside in the 90s, early 90s, when our parents would drop us off either Syracuse or Cranford or Clark or Manville or Pattenburg or wherever it was along Conrail, some of that passion was a release of energy that was not being allowed to manifest itself any other way.
Mm-hmm.
Because my dad was authoritarian about it, 100%. And it's funny because my dad was a in general, was a respected teacher. I mean, he helped a lot of people out. When he passed away, hundreds and hundreds of people reached out to me. Yeah, we had almost 1,000 people reach out through the funeral service website, and hundreds personally got in touch with me to express their condolences and how much my dad meant to them and how he saw something in them that no one else did. So there was a lot to it. And one of the things he did not understand until later in his life, after my sister passed away on top of it, was to recognize that this passion for trains was more than just a fad. It was more than just kids playing. So it's an interesting point, I think, that you make, that there's some of that darkness is frankly is manifested in the passion, the burning energy behind continuing to create something on the Onondaga Cutoff. Good point. Interesting discussion.
You can picture, what you missed, in a sense.
And we recreate it, once a month on the layout. That's a really interesting point. I got to put some more thought into that.
Well, I enjoyed anyway teasing Dave's dad with it when he was down there, looking at all these, and this was unfinished, and it was clear, that thousands of dollars had been spent on.
True.
Lawns were not being mowed while this was being built. And, it was, I said, this is your fault.
Was that the time that Uncle Paul was here too? Or
that was the time we ran trains with both of them.
Yep. Okay. Luke Hapwell was here that night and took a bunch of pictures of that, which are still out there every once in a while on the internet, which is interesting too.
I think I ought to be charging these guys, Bruce.
I was thinking you like the psychiatrist's insight.
I know. Jack, move your microphone 1/4 of an inch down from your nose.
Oh, I'm afraid I'm going to get it caught in my scarf.
You're wearing a scarf like a...
Yeah, I'm up in the attic.
Okay.
He's in the tent. We got little kids, buddy. If you want a quiet interview, that's... I'm in the basement, which is 55 degrees, and Jack is in the attic, which is 55 degrees.
Right.
So,
okay.
Yeah. That was
where were we?
Good evening, guys. Good evening.
I know. I remember.
Well, at least I found the photo for this particular episode. I found a picture of Conrail coming out of Pattenburg Tunnel.
Perfect.
And the signals seem to be. Oh yeah, I can see where the signals are facing out too, as well as on the. It's a double track into the Pattenburg Tunnel.
Yeah, it was at that time. Yes.
Single track now, is it?
Yes. NS paid Conrail to basically fix a bunch of drainage problems and center one track in the tunnel so they could clear double stack trains.
Okay.
And so that happened in I think that actually the construction was in 99 and continued through day one. And it wasn't until 2000 that they started running, the extra height cars into New Jersey on that route.
Right. Okay. All right. So what do you think, Bruce?
Shall we try to go where we wanted to go?
Yeah. So Bruce had a good question. We kind of left off. You guys have got to spend some more quality time together, just the two of you. Or you know what? I think it's the three of us that need to. And there's a lot of things we can iron out about your lives.
No, hey, I'm always up for that. You know that.
You guys are cute.
I take that with the highest compliment. Thank you.
Well, Jack, I thought your explanation of it was excellent. Actually, you scared me when you said that Dave was easily provoked, but I'll probably give him a wide berth now from now on. But
I don't think I'm easily provoked.
No, I don't think that's what I meant.
I mean, there's fire there if you look for it, I guess. But,
No, actually, I think, Dave's very diplomatic now. You have to push him pretty far to get him to really get mad at you.
Oh, yeah? Well,
yeah.
I'm always up for a challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, here we go.
But
last week you called me an odd duck.
You are an odd duck.
How do you figure that?
What's wrong with that?
How do you figure that? Well, I'm not the one that I'm not.
Wait, you think is there an AML in every street corner?
Yeah, there should be.
Yeah, there should be that.
It used to be like the old days. There was a police box on every street corner.
Yeah, railroad columnists on every street corner.
Yeah,
I mean, Lionel, you're one of a kind. And if you're one of a kind in life, that's the best kind of thing to be, and it makes you an odd duck in the best possible way.
Okay.
I mean, I throw myself in the same category, definitely.
We're 24 minutes in. This is you guys are just. That's what I was trying to get at last. When after your first episode, you guys have already heard it. After Jack's part one of his interview, and then the next day we played the episode about remote operations. That's what I was trying to get at when we were doing that. Is the emotional side of what the remote operations has done and how you've connected with so many people. But anyway.
Well, yeah, that connection's that's a big deal, and that's something. It's funny. Is my dad was pulling me from Pattenburg Tunnel. What he was encouraging was that we go back and spend time with the family who was back at home. My mom, my sister, both of whom were ill at the time, and my Aunt Colleen, who came down to see my mom and my sister, and the other kids we left back at home. So my dad he wasn't doing it because he hated trains or hated me liking trains. He just didn't see it as a connection to the community in his frame of mind. And I think that's one of the special things you've done with the AML, Lionel. I mean, there's not many people that can do what you've done, built what you've built, and you've done it because you're the guy that could do it. I think different people do that in different ways.
Probably pretty much for the same reason what Jack just described. All right, enough about this. We gotta find out more about Jack. We haven't even scratched the surface. I made notes from last time. And Bruce had a very good question. He wants to know that when the two of you went into New Jersey Transit to serve as interns, and you went in on the same day, your first day was the same day, did you guys know that was happening, or did you just kind of bump into each other at the front door?
No, I think we knew.
We knew. Because that was the same summer we were on that Amtrak trip, Jack, the second Amtrak trip, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I had sent you a address or something. Because we were in touch about that opportunity before.
Correct.
During the, as our last year of college wound down, because that was when I had been put onto that path by people who, mentored me at Rutgers, where I went to college, and elsewhere. So, I alerted Dave to that as well, that, there's this opportunity and this is where you send the resume. And it wasn't just to the human resources department. It was to a particular person. In the transit, planning organization, who gathered up the resumes and passed them around the departments. And, each department head would go through the resumes and pick off, the one that they wanted, or, the ones that they were interested in. So,
and what's interesting here too, and you're right, this is exactly how it went. And mine ended up being a call because this my whole story is part of the first trilogy. So that's worth listening to from my standpoint. But what's interesting about Jack, the people that he's talking about at Rutgers, this is one of the premier transportation planners in New Jersey history. So Jack's graduate degree at Rutgers was his master's in city regional planning. You should tell everybody about Martin and that whole connection, Jack, because I think that's a fascinating link.
Yeah, I was individual's name is Martin Robbins, and he has a deep connection to the establishment of New Jersey Transit. And it's almost a prehistory back in the late 1970s, and he has been a dedicated transit advocate his whole life. A lawyer by trade, understood bonding and finance. He, the back end stuff that we all think is almost kind of boring and sharky, if you know what I mean. You know how people talk about lawyers sometimes. There's there's ones that mean well and they make a positive difference in the world, and Martin Robbins was one of them. He understood that for public transportation to work in New Jersey, it needed a stable source of financing. It needed to be under state control and serve the public first and foremost. So, he knew how to, take those ideals and the things that people talk about and want to achieve and, make them reality in the legislative process and in the budget process and in the, and that takes a lot of, smarts and determination and strategy. And, I can't say enough about the man. So I met a lot of close friends there who also worked in that capacity. But my special project for him was to, basically write this long history of, public transportation and finance in New Jersey. From the railroad's point of view, yes, they had these huge tax bases or, tax liabilities. They were being taxed on these passenger terminals that basically weren't bringing in any income. And it was, once the freight business started to go away, sort of the entire structure was beginning to collapse. So, I got to trace through a lot of that history. The railroads made some, threats even as early as the late 1950s, but we sort of consider the heyday still of not even just the pre-Conrail era, but even the pre-Conrail era. It was Erie and Lackawanna, not Erie, Lackawanna, or still Pennsylvania and New York Central rather than Penn Central. You were already in, dire straits, even in the steam to diesel transition era. They knew, the long-term outlook wasn't good.
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Are questions allowed?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'll stop. Just jump in anytime. I'm going to keep talking until someone stops me.
Yeah, I'm beginning to get that impression. But it's all good stuff. But how old is New Jersey Transit?
The corporation was formed in 1979.
Okay, because the way you're talking about, so when did you graduate from Rutgers?
2001, December 2001.
So this fellow you're speaking of, what was his name again?
Martin Robbins.
So was he involved somehow in the conception of New Jersey Transit? Is that what you're saying?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. He was involved in the sort of the legislative and, financial creation of the agency. It wasn't the structure of it as a public corporation. It's not a entity of the state per se. It's a standalone entity. It's not, there's all sorts of work rules and labor rules that other, state agencies are subject to that New Jersey Transit is not.
Okay. So then it's a standalone agency, and it was created in 1979. And this fellow you speak of, his name was, I'm sorry, I forgot again.
Martin Robbins?
Martin Robbins. I remember the Martin part. I didn't remember the Robbins part. So he was one of the originators of the New Jersey Transit. He was a lawyer, and yet somehow he was involved as one of your professors at Rutgers. Yeah,
I guess later on in his career, like I said, he come to Rutgers to establish this, institute there that he would lead. And like I said, my job in it was to sort of trace this. He had a passionate interest in the history of transportation finance and how much of the instability and almost like failure to function of public transportation that exists, not just trains but buses and so forth, actually has its origins in a in the lack of a stable funding source, because New Jersey does not fund New Jersey Transit through dedicated sources. It funds it through general appropriation.
Okay.
So if there's a budget, crisis or tax revenues go down, New Jersey Transit's going to get less money, and the train or bus that was out there last year is going to get cut this year.
Okay. So can I ask both of you a question? Is this some sort of a thing where you're going to try to turn this into like literally a 37-part trilogy?
It could be.
This stuff is fascinating.
You need to plan your questions.
This stuff is fascinating. So, I guess the long story short, right, is that so Jack knew this guy ahead of time, knew that there was internships at Transit. He and I were talking about that our senior year of college, and he had already started his master's program. He went for 5 years to get the master's. I graduated in 4 with just a bachelor's degree. And we both applied for internships at the same time. We both got internships for different reasons. But because we were on that trip out west on Amtrak to Flagstaff, where we spent 2 weeks walking up and down the last days of the Santa Fe west of Flagstaff, which we talked about in the first interview with Jack, we knew the first day was July 7th or 8th or whatever it was, 1999. And it was a Monday, hot as heck. And we rode the Raritan Valley Line train in together from Raritan. He drove up from Hillsborough where he was living, and I drove down from my dad's house. I was still living up in Long Valley. I was living at my dad's house. Yeah. And we met and we rode, 5702, the 705 train or whatever. I have to look it up, but it was a train from Raritan that got us to Newark at like 8:05. And we walked in together to the headquarters like wide-eyed kids. Two 22-year-old kids, like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed, like walking into a railroad headquarters with employee passes, because we had gotten the passes as part of the internship program, and it was, whoa, this is the big deal. I'll never forget that day. That was awesome.
Yeah,
fascinating story.
Yeah, and it's very, I don't know. It's almost like
it's romantic.
Yeah,
it's romantic.
It almost is.
It's a Hallmark movie, man.
It is. It's a Hallmark movie. These two guys. Now, were you guys arm in arm, or were you like a half a foot apart? Like, did you stop outside? Like, I understand.
I envisioned him looking up like Mary Tyler Moore.
I totally did. I looked up and I said,
we made it,
dude. Jack, like it says AJ Transit on the building. And Jack's like, dude, haven't you ever been to Newark before? And I'm like, no. Because Jack's dad in the summers, he's a teacher. In the summers, Jack's dad still drives a lunch truck.
Right. Like to this day?
He hasn't done it. He probably gave it up a couple of years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a whole other thing that brought us into contact with trains and unexpected places. So do you, before I continue?
Yeah. No.
Do you want to hear this?
No.
Well, suffice it to say,
yeah, I do.
If
you can give me the short version, yes. I'm going to put you on a buzzer. You got 2 minutes.
We want the Cliff's Notes version.
Yeah,
right.
You got 2 minutes. Go.
Okay, 2 minutes. Go. So the lunch truck is it's a truck with a box on the back. That's doors open up and there's coffee and food and all this other stuff. So the way people who work in industrial buildings or auto garages or places like that don't have a lot of restaurants around to go to, this little catering truck will come around, and they'll blow the whistle inside or something, and all these people will come out and pick up a coffee or a sandwich or whatever they're going to get their lunch from. So these coffee trucks, are usually run by immigrants. In my dad's case, they were run by either Portuguese or mostly Portuguese. So what these guys would do, because they work, every day of the year, all kinds of weather. You're standing out in the freezing cold with a change machine. These guys would take, summers off and go back to Portugal or go back to visit relatives or whatever. And my dad got into the business of basically being a substitute driver on these trucks. And because you go around or would go around in these, urban areas in New Jersey that still have, a lot of manufacturing, you'd go to the places where they do laundry or make crayons or Nabisco or, scrap yards, all kinds of places that tend to bring you into train track proximity. So my favorite thing to do was, go with them. I'd get up at 3 a.m. or something and go to a catering hall, ice the truck, pick up all the food. And I would go through all this stuff, just for the 10 or 15 minutes that we would end up at a at one of these industries that was next to a piece of railroad. Whether it was in Patterson underneath the old main line, or Dave and I went to Pagoda where the river line comes through. We saw trains in Pagoda.
Oh, it was awesome. Yep.
There was a spot that you could just never get to on the Northeast Corridor, right next to Lane Interlocking, which is where where the Pennsy main line, where they had built a flyover so that the eastbound freight trains could duck under the passenger main and go into the huge yard that used to be just outside of Newark. And one of these laundry places where Aramark, where all your tablecloths and napkins and hotel sheets and just everything in the world gets sent to get laundered. Basically this place backed up right onto the train tracks at Lane. Not a place you would ever be, except if you were working there or on the coffee truck that stopped there. So there were a whole ton of interesting places to go and see. That's the story of the coffee truck.
Yes, I mean, Jack. Hold
on a minute.
Did I make it? Did I make it in 2 minutes?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Close enough. Now, I have to ask the question because I'm sensing here it's sometimes that you knew there's a train coming, but your dad had to go away with the coffee truck. Now, did that emotionally scar you like it did Dave?
No, because you knew what you were getting with the coffee truck. The coffee truck at times, though, there were stops that were actually the timing was actually perfect because they matched up with the train schedule. So the one we had in Patterson, I loved to go because that one stop in Patterson was right underneath, an overhead bridge with a main line on it. And every time we went there, during that stop, there was a train east and a train west. And that was when, that was in 1984 when they were doing the Lackawanna re-electrification. And that is one of my memories is seeing one of the transit F units that they had leased from or bought or whatever, or had rebuilt. It was a former Chicago and Northwestern F unit repainted in transit colors that transit had acquired so that they could run diesels on the Morris and Essex while the line was being re-electrified. We also, I guess we parked in Broad Street for a while. I mean, we just saw U-34s all over the place.
Oh, wow.
Man, we saw a B&O wagon top bay window caboose on the juice train.
Oh, really?
One morning, on 20.
That's awesome.
On 22 at NK.
Yeah.
So just all kinds of just oddball stuff, and there were days. There was another one we were up in Hawthorne or something. We saw the Susquehanna local, and this is when before Susquehanna was doing the stack trains and stuff. They had really been cut down to like a regional railroad. So this one day, we're hanging out there, and the Susquehanna track is across the street from where we have lunch, and we're out there having our own break for 15 or 20 minutes every day. And I don't think we'd ever seen a train there. And this one day, here comes this yellow and black Susquehanna GP18 with a line of cars, and there's these Hostess pastries called Susie Q's. It's just like chocolate, 2 pieces of chocolate cake with a cream filling. Probably an entire day's worth of calories. And my dad gets the idea to go throw these Susie Q's up to the engineer. So train's coming and it's going 10 or 15 miles an hour, really slow. And my dad's got this package of Susie Q's in his hand, and the cab comes by, and the engineer sees my dad's going to loft these things up to him, and like my dad makes this perfect throw. Like if the engineer wasn't sitting there, the thing would have like been right through the cab window. And like the engineer's watching it right into his hand. And at the last second, it's like a football player who's turning to go downfield before they make the catch, turns to, I guess, say something to his brakeman, and these Susie Q's hit him in the hand and like fall to the ground. Oh, it was so disappointing.
You need to recreate that on the OC.
We do have the Susquehanna train. We can figure something out.
Yeah, we could figure something out. I don't even know if they still make it.
Oh, they must make something they can toss at each other.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there was just a lot of incidental train contact. Enough so that look, if it didn't happen today, it was going to happen tomorrow, and I knew it enough. It's one thing being my dad going out to these industrial places and backwaters and deep in Essex and Bergen and Passaic. These are places people didn't really go much anymore by that time. This was it's hard to describe what that was like. Newark was not the place it is now.
Now, Newark in the 80s was a tough spot.
Yeah, it was a tough town. So, it was interesting. My dad chose to take me along, me being, 7 or 8 or 9 years old at the time. But I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
Okay. This is going to take like days. This is going to take like months.
No, we're walking into transit. This is just the background.
Yeah, so I mean, this is all the stuff.
It's taken 45 minutes to walk in.
So far to recap,
but this is
they're outside the transit building and haven't even started to work yet.
Yeah,
right. But this is all the stuff you carry with you into that moment. That's what makes that moment, sort of a watershed. As you're thinking of that, all those things that you're experienced in life that tie back to this. At least that's
right. All those things sort of being an outsider, and here we are. You walk through that threshold, and suddenly you're no longer an outsider, even though it's a commuter agency. You walk in, and suddenly you're walking in as an employee to a railroad retirement job. And we got on the elevator, and at that time everything was on the fourth floor. I think we were both on the fourth floor, right, Jack?
Yeah.
So we went up to the fourth floor. We got off, and we walked our separate ways to go find our new bosses. And yeah, that was sort of the beginning of the clock, for things to move forward. So I ended up getting a job from planning. So both of our interviews were with the planning department to start with. And it wasn't till later that both of us got jobs on the railroad, because those are separate groups within NJ Transit.
Okay, I have to ask a question. You said you went your separate ways when you got there. Was it as traumatic as when you were split up in grade school?
No, this is totally euphoric.
Yeah, this was a good separate ways.
This was a good set. Yeah, no. We were both excited, so excited about the future at this point that we had, instead of 1 year behind us as friends, we had, at this point, 15 years or whatever behind us as friends. So it's a different perspective.
I'm exhausted.
You keep saying that.
I am. What can I tell you? I thought it. So.
Okay, well, let's continue. You went your separate ways. Jack, where did you go to?
You got like 30 seconds, Jack. Where did you go?
Oh, I went to the GIS department.
What is the GIS department?
That's Geographic Information System.
Okay,
that's like a computer mapping.
So how long did it take you to? So do I have this right? You are the guy in charge of scheduling for New Jersey Transit.
Yes, that is correct for now.
Is there a change coming?
Dun, dun, dun.
No. I hope not.
Okay.
Probably not unless someone hears this interview.
Are you with your current wife?
Yes. Who else would I be with?
These are why we're asking.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. No, I was just going to say I'm not with my former wife.
Okay. Well, no, that's really, well. You just said for now. You're with you're doing this job. So I'm just thinking, well, maybe for now you're with this wife. You have to listen to the.
I have to hear myself.
Yeah, you'll have to listen to an episode with a fella named Spoon, who's I'm assuming by now, in the 2 weeks that has transpired since your first interview, I'm assuming by now that you've listened to several of the episodes of the podcast.
Did I hear crickets?
Yeah, you did.
That's where we need to get the industrial fans going. So
yeah, exactly.
Make it sound like something's blocking me out.
Yeah. So how many people are in the scheduling department? Oh, come on. It's 5, 10, 8, 3, 20, 40, 15. Okay. Roughly 15. There's not a quiz on this. There's no right or wrong answers. So how long have you been in the scheduling department?
Since 2007.
Okay. And how long have you been with New Jersey Transit?
Oh, I'm sorry. I've been in the scheduling department since 2004.
Okay. So apparently there are wrong answers.
Yeah, there are wrong answers. That was factually incorrect. I don't know why I said 2007.
I don't know either. I think that's when we started this interview.
Well, let's start. Why did you go from mapping to scheduling? What was
good question
there?
Oh, well, because I had always wanted to, be involved with the railroad somehow. And I never knew what the right place was before. I had always pictured myself, I guess, as a dispatcher or, something like that. Something that, wasn't directly moving a single train, but had some, I don't want to, authority is not the word I'm looking for.
Okay,
but
so when you were in the mapping department, where did your paycheck come from? Was it from New Jersey Transit?
Yeah, it came from corporate.
So you were working for the railroad at that point.
No,
you're working for the whole agency.
There's three separate payrolls within it. Actually, more than that within NJ Transit. Believe it or not.
Most of the work I did in GIS was either on behalf of our, government relations group, or on behalf of a planning study, or on behalf of bus operations.
So on the top of your paycheck, it said on behalf of the planning committee.
Well, New Jersey Transit, that was considered corporate. So like Dave was about to say, the three arms, there's a separate almost chunk of the organization, whether it's.
So, all right, let me put it to you this way. When I worked for the Canadian National Railroad for 4 or 5 years, right out of high school, and I was driving a truck, was I not working for the railroad then?
You were, but there was no CN Corporation that wasn't the railroad. CN Corporate didn't have light rail. CN Corporate didn't have a bus operation. CN Corporate didn't have an engineering company. NJ Transit is a parent company for all of those subsidiaries.
Yeah, I worked for CN Express, which was part of the railroad, but
right.
Well, I'll put it this way: my job was not under railroad retirement.
Oh, okay.
That's probably the easiest way to explain it.
Are you getting any of this, Bruce?
I'm making copious notes.
Not a boy.
Yeah, and Transit's an interesting, and this is why Martin Robbins is such an interesting character. Like,
let's not go back there. Let's not go back.
Well, but he had the foresight. So it's you almost think of NJ Transit like a university where it's New Jersey Transit with the logo and with the way to go and the slogans. We have a common marketing department, engineering department, corporate relations department, government relations department, payroll, etc. But underneath that corporate umbrella, you've got different operating groups, and the people that work for the different operating groups get paid under a different color of money, so to speak. And the railroad operation, which is where both Jack and I work now, is not where we were hired originally. The original payroll, all the interns are hired for the corporate payroll. So now we both apply, over time, we both got opportunities on the railroad in different departments, and now we both work for the railroad.
Yes, I'm thinking, Lionel, the analogy might be back in the day, Canadian Pacific had its railroad division, ships and airplanes.
Yeah, Right. That's right. It was all CP.
Yeah,
but it wasn't CP rail necessarily.
But when you moved from mapping to scheduling, it wasn't like you were going from one company to another. It's just all about this being a railroad retirement.
Yeah, and it's just a different division of the company.
So did you not have a retirement plan when you were in mapping?
Oh yeah. They had a 401k and
So did that just roll over into your
pension,
into your railroad retirement?
Yes. The difference there is railroad retirement is it's like another supplemental withholding on top of Social Security. Or Dave's probably can explain this better than I can.
Basically, railroad retirement was the original United States pension system. The railroad industry banded together to create the Railroad Retirement Board, which is now run by the government, and it actually predated Social Security. So Social Security is an outcome of the Great Depression, and it's a glass floor, above which every taxpayer gets a certain pension from the government when they reach retirement age, which I think at this point is 67 in the United States. Railroad retirement, which predates Social Security and is better funded because it's not as rolled in with the government as Social Security is. Railroad retirement, the normal retirement date, I believe, is 62, but it depends on your equation and how many years you've worked and all these other things. But suffice it to say that basically it's a pension system which includes a medical beneficiary and medical program, so we pay extra in compared to Social Security, which is the American standard for most jobs across the country. So the railroad, I think it's still a better retirement plan than what you have for Social Security, but that it's a big jump. You do pay quite a bit more in off every paycheck up front, and in turn get a much bigger return when you do finally retire.
Okay. So the only difference between mapping and being part of the scheduling is the retirement. The rest of it is you're part of New Jersey Transit.
That's correct.
That's fair.
And the culture, of course, is a little bit different too, because when you're in the corporate departments, you don't deal with operations. Operations really runs on its own.
Sure.
And so I think that for me, that was a big deal. Like getting into railroad operations, being part of railroad retirement, that's the official sign that you're a railroader in the United States.
But
right,
okay, because it's all about this railroad retirement thing. Because when I worked for Canadian National, I mean, I spent some time working on the railroad side of it too, and it was pretty easy to transfer from one to the other. It wasn't that big of a deal. And it sounds like it's not that big of a deal. Once you're in New Jersey Transit, it's not that hard to move about the company from one facet to another.
That's true. Yes. At least there's at least you basically get first dibs on opportunities in other parts of the company.
Yeah, because
as opposed to an outsider.
Because your paycheck says New Jersey Transit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like as time has gone by, I'm becoming like the angry podcaster.
Perhaps.
Bruce, you sound like Jack.
Oh, Bruce is just he's just thinking it through. Okay, we got a.
So where were we? Oh, we moved over to planning.
Yeah, we're
from mapping.
Yeah, we've gone from mapping. Now we've
or to scheduling.
Yes, 2004. Now
Jack, you have to talk about your first day on the job with JJ.
Oh yeah, that was rough.
That was great. Tell that story.
Yeah, I mean, things were a little different down there. So,
okay, we're done, and you're done at scheduling now.
Yeah,
okay.
And I think I had never.
Okay, because the folks playing at home, they're over on the other side of the field watching the fake end around right now.
Yeah. So JJ was your boss at scheduling.
Yeah, and I think I mean, to sort of finish the other point, I had never really found what niche I wanted to be in as a railroader. I mean, I think when I was finishing up my undergraduate degree before I decided to go to graduate school, I had actually considered, because prior to the Conrail merger, CSX was hiring dispatchers in like Chicago or something. So I was I actually considered that, because I wanted to be in like a system operations or a dispatch center that ran the whole show, rather than out just running a single train or whatever. So my interest in operations sort of went in that direction, and I didn't really know how to translate planning into that until coming into transit. I met the rail service planning department, who sets the schedules for the whole system and matches up train consists with ridership demand, matches up schedule stopping patterns with ridership demand, decides what's an express and what's a local, that kind of stuff. So meeting that group really, that was my destiny once I found out it existed and talked to some of the people in it.
So after you got hired full time at the mapping department and you went home to tell your dad, like, did you tell your dad you're working for New Jersey Transit?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Dave, when you got a job at wherever Bridges and whatever it was, after you got hired on full time by the New Jersey, did you go home and tell your dad you're working for New Jersey Transit?
I went home and told my dad I'm working for the railroad.
There you go.
And he said, "Which one?"
There you go.
New Jersey Transit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that would be a yes then.
It's confusing, right? And like,
it's not. It's confusing for you guys. For us, over here on the other side,
it's all the railroad.
Yeah, it's the railroad. You're working for New Jersey Transit.
Yeah,
right. And that's that's a little bit of a thing. Transit. From a planner's perspective like mine, transit is everything. It's the train, it's the bus, it's the light rail, it's all the pieces that make it so that people can travel without using a car, which is a little bit different. If and a lot of times when you get on the railroad, you get this singular focus that it's about the railroad and about the trains. You don't have those trains unless you have ferries included. Unless you have connections to these other things, so people can finish their trip.
Yeah. So there's many different facets of New Jersey Transit. So anyways,
yeah, definitely.
So anyways, it's the summer of 2004. It's a hot and sticky day in late August.
Yeah. So one of the interesting things on the railroad is there's a little bit of there was definitely a different culture. Corporate, I guess, had, started to let people go dress casual and stuff. And you definitely saw that. It used to be a tie every day, no matter what. And then they went to, we'll go to dress casual on Fridays, and then the standards just slowly slip one step at a time, to the point, so I'm working up in corporate where I don't have to wear a tie on Fridays, and I just kind of come in, even when I do wear ties, looking however I want to look. At least back then, the railroad was still, pretty old fashioned about, appearance. We had a VP, GM, vice president, general manager, who changed his shirt at lunch, so his white shirt after lunch wouldn't be wrinkled. Completely old school executive mindset. And downstairs comes me with my hair out to wherever, and my clothes are all rumpled and whatever. So and this is like a month in, or a couple weeks into the job, and I'm completely, on one hand, I'm anxious to prove myself. I'm exasperated to so excited to be there. And this one contact of ours, and then this other person who ran was my boss's boss's boss. They come over to me and they're they're talking to me about something, and then at the end of the conversation, they kind of lean over real close, and this person who I see as a sort of a god, he's running the show. This guy comes and talks to you. You're lucky. Pulls $1 out of his pocket and leans in real close to me and says, "I want you to take this, and I want you to go to a dry cleaner and get your clothes pressed." And it was just, I don't know. I didn't accomplish anything for the rest of the day. Because you're just sitting there in this state of shock, and it's okay. That's how that was, it's sort of like hazing. That's how the message gets across, and you get brought in, and it can be very blunt. You don't have time to give people subtle hints. You get them on board, and get them with the program, and get them thinking how you need them to think, and focused on what they need to be focused on. And in my case, it was I can't bring you to a meeting. On the railroad, this is the way it works. It might work, might not work this way up in planning, up on the 4th floor, or up on the 5th floor, or on any other place in the company. It might, where you came from, it might work. You need to do it this way here. And that was one of my tasks every weekend after that. I ironed every shirt and every pair of pants I wore to work. I didn't make that mistake again. And there's a lot of mistakes you make like that. It's a very easy trap to fall in, I guess, when you're in a position like that, to think you know more than you do, or believe you have more power than, more say over things than you really have. So I think I did an okay job, not falling into that particular hole. Not going outside of chain of command or outside of chain of authority.
You did a great job with that. You did. I mean,
it's tempting. It is.
Yeah,
tempting.
But you were able to change gears, and you really found traction quickly. And as I recall, it wasn't long. I mean, so that first position was dealing with sort of the future planning, right? So looking at the arc tunnels, the access to the regions core. So the original idea in our generation, to push new tunnels into New York City from New Jersey to New York. Jack was the one who was doing the service planning modeling for that. And so that was really your first job on transit, which led to everything else, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
how many new tunnels have been built since 2004?
Well, none.
That's one of our big problems down here. Yeah.
Well, didn't you just say that
no new tunnel has been built since 1910?
Dave, did you just not say that one of Jack's first jobs was about tunnels in the New York?
Was about designing the service plan.
I know what's coming.
Right. Service plan provided new tunnels got built.
Okay.
Well, the new tunnels haven't been built yet.
So your first job was designing the scheduling and service plan. Had there ever been tunnels built?
Yes. So there were two positions that were actually created specifically within the planning group to support that project. And
you were getting paid for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know what a great job.
Not a whole hell of a lot, but yes. So yeah, those were fun times. That was my first chance to actually write a service plan and write a schedule.
And what are the dry cleaning standards in New Jersey Transit these days? In the
I never
scheduling
stopped. For me, it's the same. It's kind of funny because we have a younger member of our staff who you can see, like, if it was the old days, he would get quite a ribbing. But at the same time, things are different now. It's you don't do that to people. And this is an individual who is, and we have a bunch of them on the rail service planning staff who are just kind of eccentric geniuses. And you have to let them, you're not going to
planning tunnels that'll never be built,
or solving other types of problems that other people can't solve. Like you want to run full service with 2 tracks out of with 2 tracks out in Penn Station, or you want to figure out a complicated outage. How do you have to modify the schedule to help a complicated track outage work? That isn't something that everybody can do. And when you find somebody that can do it, chances are they've got some other flaws, and you just have to take that along with all the other things, along with all the other benefits that come from their ability.
So you're never going to tell me about scheduling the New Jersey Transit, then? This is some sort of a dodge, right?
No, that's our next step here. I mean, that's Jack, because Jack did that after the service planning thing, and the whole ARC project fell through in spectacular fashion. In what was that, Jack?
2010.
When Chris Christie took office and famously killed the entire project. 20 years of planning and millions of dollars that had gone into it, killed it so that he could divert the money to the turnpike repair or the Route 109 repair, or whatever.
Highway.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, just he put it towards the highways instead, and did it in the brash, bully-esque fashion that he did everything. Really, that was a real moment of reckoning for all of NJ Transit, because we put all of our cards in this access to the Regions Core deck. We were sure. In fact, it was funded. I mean, it was all put together. And Chris Christie reneged on that deal. So the deck got shuffled, and Jack took a promotion at that point, right, Jack? Over to the regular the regular scheduling.
You could have.
So after this job that you'd spent 6 years working on fell through, they gave you a promotion.
Well, it was because of a retirement. So I actually got Man, I have to think of the history there.
Come on, you guys. This is some sort of a bit, right? It's an hour and 10 minutes, and we haven't got any of the good stuff yet. It's all good. Well, I do ask. Bruce, help me out. I am becoming the angry podcaster.
So what's your question?
Well, I want to know about scheduling. What's it like to be the guy in charge of New Jersey Transit scheduling? Because people would be very.
Now we're there.
Are we there now? Okay. So when did you become the head of the department?
2018.
Okay.
2018. When my longtime friend and mentor retired.
Okay. And so, like, how? We better not even ask that question.
Go for it.
Well, can you give us a capsulized version of what's involved in being in charge of the scheduling department? I mean, I think a lot of people would be interested in knowing what it's like to be in charge of the railroad scheduling department of New Jersey Transit, but we need short answers. We desperately need short answers.
Okay. Well, the short answer is it's a lot less maybe glorious than you'd think, because you come in with a lot of ideas. You come in with a lot of things you want to try and a lot of things you want to do, and you gradually learn how many obstacles there are, and not just obstacles of this train and that train are going to get in one another's way at Kearney Junction or something. There's obstacles with public reaction. There's obstacles with with individual groups. There's obstacles with how the actual train sets get manipulated, how the crews get manipulated. There's so many little pieces. It's almost like a mosaic that adds up to it.
So you decide you're going to schedule a new train on, pick a line. How many lines are there out of what is the Penn Station, the main station in Norfolk? How do you say it?
I've got a good one about this. We got punished for scheduling new trains because we did it the wrong way. One of my real baptismal experiences, I think, was in 2012, and this was immediately before Hurricane Sandy. We had such overcrowding on the Morristown line, and at that time, I had been scheduling the Hoboken division for probably about a year and a half, and the Hoboken division has the former Lackawanna commuter territory, which had grown, was really starting to have explosive growth in ridership. So, we had these groups of trains that are, they have a special way of scheduling the stops and trying to give expresses. There's so many big stations. The weird thing about the line is, you think of an express and it's, carrying a whole bunch of people very far away. Right. But the weird thing about the Lackawanna territory is that all the big stations are close in. So if you want to schedule, a nice looking express, you're going to skip all the big stations and that train isn't going to have any riders on it. So it's this balancing act. It was this constant balancing act of, trying to keep the trip times down, trying to still serve the big stations and trying to balance out the passenger loads on the trains. This sort of like three-way puzzle that we had been struggling with for a number of years. And then finally, in late October, we finally got, permission to do what it took to, redo the evening schedule and add a train, which sounds like a dream, right? You're going to take something that's like, oh, this thing that has all these stops can be an express. But it actually was, a much more difficult challenge than it looked like, because what ends up getting pushed away is the, local travel opportunities, people making trips to smaller stops that are going to get skipped once you put this new express train in.
So how long does it take to schedule a train? I think I'm just going to
quite a while.
Bruce, I think I'm just going to start interrupting.
That was months of work. Months.
Bruce?
Yeah.
I think I'm just going to start interrupting.
Go for it. Throw the questions in there, man.
I would love it if you did that.
So so you're talking. You mentioned the Hoboken line. So so you wanna put in an express on a particular line, like.
Yeah, what we were given permission to do basically was take a train that was kind of a mixture of local and express. It was a train that was what I'll call semi-express.
Okay, but so how does this happen? How does this happen? Does a guy just kind of hand you a slip of paper? Like, how does it happen that all of it that you got? Like, how many lines are there? Like, first off, is Penn Station the main station? Do all trains? Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's 11 lines in northern New Jersey.
Okay.
But only Corridor, Coast, and the M&E and the Montclair. So only 4 of them actually come directly out of New York Penn in the peak.
Right. So I should be looking at a map.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the map and I don't see any of the names he's talking about. I see like the Montclair Boonton line, the Morristown line, and the Gladstone branch, and Main line, and Bergen County line, and Passac Valley line.
Valley. This is a good example of how the company has decided that customers want specific names for their lines.
Okay, but you call it something totally different.
But the railroad refers to it in the historic sense. So the M&E is the Morris and Essex Railroad that built the Morristown line and the Gladstone branch.
Okay.
So we call that the M&E.
Okay. So that's the 2 green lines I'm looking at.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so the Hoboken line would be what? Go to Spring Valley, or?
Well, Hoboken, those green lines that go to New York traditionally only went to Hoboken.
Oh, okay.
So what happened in 1996 was a connection was built between the Morris and Essex and the Northeast Corridor that enabled trains from the Morris and Essex that previously could only have gone to Hoboken, actually enabled them to divert lines and go straight to New York. And one of the interesting outcomes of that is basically a preponderance of the ridership chose to go to Penn rather than go to Hoboken, and that was an outcome that the entire company, a lot of professional ability and a lot of analysis didn't anticipate to the extent that it occurred. So it really actually created a service problem for us because we only had a limited number of those trains that we could run to New York over, the section because Amtrak owns the Northeast Corridor. We only had a limited number of trains we could actually run from the M&E to New York. So we actually run fewer of those trains that many more people use. And in the meanwhile, we still have all this service going back and forth to Hoboken that is relatively, more lightly utilized.
Maybe let me try it from this angle. So I'm looking at the schedule for the North Jersey coastline, and it looks very, very complicated. And the reason we're here is because of the Onondaga Cutoff, or the OC, as those who are more familiar with it call it. So how does one take a schedule that is this complicated and get enjoyment out of building a schedule for the Onondaga Cutoff? That's kind of what I was trying to say last week. It's like
I actually did give some thought to that. I mean, it's the same type of thinking. It's the same. It's the same sort of puzzling, the same sort of puzzle solving, and it's the same sort of thing that you never really solve. You're constantly, developing and evolving it around new ideas and around changes in circumstances. So, we may change the North Jersey coastline schedule because more people are riding from South Amboy and Perth Amboy now than were historically. So we may have to go through and add stops and figure out how to do that. Whereas on the Onondaga Cutoff, yes, we developed a schedule that works in a cycle, but now we want to do this. Or now we've run that schedule a bunch of times and we figured out, well, here's where its weaknesses are and here's where its strengths are. How do we mitigate these weaknesses and make this work better? Or how do we make it so that coal cars go to the paper mill? Or how do we make it so that a new industry gets served? Or Dave built as part of the Onondaga Cutoff, he added this entire branch that goes down to Cazenovia that carried 2 new types of cars. That wasn't in the original plan. So we had to go back and think, well, how are we going to circulate scrap metal gondolas and cement hoppers? So there was a whole...
So how does a guy who is in charge of these massive schedules, how many different lines are there in New Jersey Transit?
12.
How does a guy who has 12 different lines, he has to oversee these massive schedules? I'm assuming each line probably has a schedule that's as intense as the North Jersey coastline in some form or another.
Yeah, most of them.
Yeah. How does a guy manage? How do you manage to take all that information and whittle it down to something simplistic? Because it would be incredibly much more simplistic for a model railroad. Like what is the? I mean, you're in charge of the scheduling for the whole New Jersey Transit Railroad system. And now you seem to have as much fun operating the Onondaga Cutoff as you do the New Jersey Transit system. So
it's true. It's some of the challenges are similar in nature, though.
I'm sure they are, but
it's.
I can't imagine that Dave's paying you even a tenth of what the New Jersey Transit.
New Jersey Transit does not have C39.8s and SD60s, so or intermodal trains or any of the other or memories. You know what I mean? Not the kinds of there's not this emotional attachment to,
and there's no government and community relations department demanding that you make absurd stops for people that don't necessarily then.
Dave's internet.
Yeah, Dave cut out there.
So is that what the attraction is? That there's no red tape to go through? It's just you and Dave, and you get to do most of it.
There's a little bit of that. I mean, but it's all about fitting all of these different variables and different size pieces into the box.
Do you see similarities between operating model railroad the way you guys do, and operating New Jersey Transit?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
So for one of the things we had to there's 2 very compelling similarities. I think one is just capacity, just track length, being able to fit a certain size train into a certain piece of track. One of the goals of the Onondaga Cutoff is run gigantic trains, but we're doing that and run a lot of trains, and we're doing that on a limited amount of track space. So we had to experiment with that. We had to figure out if we had, one intermodal train that we use to represent, 5 intermodal trains in the schedule. How fast can we get that train over the railroad and, get engines coupled to the other end of it and get it running the other way. That's the same fundamental issue we have at Penn Station, New York. How fast can you bring a train in? Is there track space for it? And how fast can you get it turned around and out going the other direction? So those.
So how much?
There's a lot of parallels.
How much connection would you have? Like, do you have any? I'm assuming you just hand down once you decide on a new train. You just hand down to some other department and they assign power and they assign how many cars, or do you decide on how many cars the train will have?
In some cases we do. But I think the thing that may be a little bit different about the cutoff is, in the music business is a contentious term known as creative control. I have a lot more of that on the Onondaga cutoff than I do in New Jersey Transit. In New Jersey Transit, there's a person who plans the equipment based on what the schedules are, and there's a person who plans the crews based on what the schedules are, and all three of those. There's a mechanical department too that actually has to clean the train, fuel the train. There's all these other pieces, and if all those things have to work together, and you kind of have to. You're in like a sack race, I would describe it. All your ankles are tied together, and you have to have all four groups kind of taking steps forward at the same time as you figure out these problems. And that's why adding a train is such a complicated endeavor.
Right. So when did you start building the Onondaga cutoff, Dave?
We started construction in 2007.
So after Jack had made it to the scheduling department.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
And what about, is it the way you dress on the OC? Is that a concern?
There's an official T-shirt.
There is an official T-shirt, but you don't have to wear it to every session. The T-shirts were created as gratitude for people that have shown a lot of support and put a lot of time into the OC. And so Jack and Rich were, quick recipients of that, obviously. But no, I mean, it's, look, you come here to have fun, and we have fun running trains. There's a camaraderie to that. Everybody jumps in with both feet, and we reenact the railroad, and we do it in a way that creates camaraderie and I think a lot of fun. And the reason it works so smoothly is because of, you can hear just how complicated what Jack does at work is. I mean, he's working with 3 or 4 other departments on a regular basis to schedule a spreadsheet of trains that has to run in a certain time slot, half of which are more than that, 3/4 of which are dependent on what Amtrak says is okay. So it's like weather forecasting. You've got like 8 variables.
Well, and then if you do something that makes the public unhappy, you're bound. You have to have a way to climb down, or a way to fix it.
So jeans and a T-shirt are okay.
On the OC, 100%.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe.
Does the T-shirt have to be pressed?
I've not ironed my T-shirt. I should do that. I'll do that next time. I have considered wearing a tie to the Onondaga cutoff. That has crossed my mind.
We could have tie night. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Tell me what night that is, and I'll make sure I don't come.
Yeah, there'll be 2 of us wearing ties, and it won't be anybody.
So how do you guys manage to? Because how do you guys manage to pull yourselves away from the intensity of having important jobs at New Jersey Transit? How do you guys manage to pull yourself away from that intensity and then try and relax and enjoy yourself on the OC? I'm fascinated by the fact that you guys are so intense.
I've got a thought on that.
Okay, would you please?
I think is what they're doing. They're pedal to the metal all day, high intensive things. By going to the OC, it's like everybody says they're in their own little world. They're controlling their own little world. They don't need to worry about anything, and they're reliving their past experiences. So they're escaping reality.
Yeah. I mean, I would offer that we're not only are we escaping reality that we deal with on a 7-day-a-week basis, really at this point, but we're creating a reality where we control or have the ability to at least contain most of the variables, Bruce. So, like, I don't know that there's only been a handful of sessions on the OC where I've felt unsatisfied. Whereas management at NJ Transit, it's management. So you're dealing with people, you're dealing with unsolvable problems, not enough resources, and you have to figure it out. And there's a lot of days that are not satisfying when you work for the railroad. But when you come to the OC for a session, we put a lot of grease in ahead of time, put a lot of elbow energy into it and polish it and turn it over. And Jack looks at it and Rich looks at it. I look at it. We're back and forth at it. We have a setup night and then it's go time. And like the Facebook Live videos show, when the spotlight's on, I think the layout dances pretty well. And I think
two things. One is, you get to see the ideas you have or the thoughts you have and through to the end. You see them happen. And, a lot of times within, New Jersey Transit is a huge organization. It's a huge system. It's if you go out and throw a rock in the ocean, like, yes, it makes a splash, but it doesn't change the waves or whatever. Whereas on a cutoff, you have an idea. Even if it's, like my thing about which engines I couple together to make up a locomotive consist, I'm going to see that at the front of an intermodal train or at the front of a merchandise freight. And that is what I pictured. So this sort of creative force you have, you get to see come to fruition, in a way that you don't always get to in real life. Because in real life, a lot of other things get in the way. In real life, you can't turn an 8-car train into a 9-car train, or you can't add this stop to this train to fix this problem without changing 10 other things. Whereas on the Onondaga cutoff, you have a problem and you can find a solution, and you can, again, just sort of see the creative process become complete. The other thing on the Onondaga cutoff, especially now with the remote stuff and the Facebook videos, is to see it makes everybody happy. There's no one who comes away from a remote session, or there's very few people, I think, who come away from a session on the cutoff or at this point from watching a video unhappy. Whereas,
which is kind of what I the point I tried to make.
So you get to, which I think is in our, I think in Dave and I's like sort of wiring or constitution, definitely in Rich's constitution, is you want to make people have a good experience and have a good memory, and we all in our own way work really hard at that. You can work your whole life at that, in the real world, and still not quite be able to do it. and so
that's a fact.
When you come away from the cutoff knowing you've made yourself happy, you've made your peers happy, you've made the people who showed up for the session happy, you made the people watching happy. I think we all really want that. Whereas, the real world is just less of a contained system.
Okay, stop.
Yeah.
That's the good one. Stop. Okay, so this is the point I made on the Patreon episode after a couple of weeks ago, is that the sense I get from the Onondaga cutoff, or the OC, is that the three of you, Dave and Jack and Rich, are so intense, and so you take what you do during the day and you transpose it to the OC, but it feels like I'm 9 years old going to the fire station with my dad. Like a distinct memory I have is my dad taking me to the local fire station to look at the fire trucks. And, like the firemen were happy to see you. I mean, that's, I don't know if that still exists today. I mean, I did it with my son.
Sure does.
Some 30 years ago. And it was the same experience. The fireman was happy to see us. So long as they, there wasn't a call or something, and they took him around, and put the hat on him, and he stood in some boots, and they put a coat on him, and, it's a 15-minute experience, but, the boy leaves, or the boys and girls leave with this sense of awesome, being awestruck by the firemen just want the kids to leave with a good feeling. And,
well, I'll add to that. I agree, 100% agree. And I think that one of the things about, rail fanning or watching fire trucks or even watching a tractor in the local farmer's field, there's an awesomeness to that when you're a kid. You watch a big machine doing what it's supposed to do, or people that are doing something spectacular, Olympic divers, for example, or gymnasts. I mean, there's a million things, right? But what's amazing about that firehouse experience, Lionel, I've thought about this a lot since our last conversation, is that you leave with the sense of belonging. You feel like not only can you just admire it and see how awesome it is in the traditional sense of the word awesome, where it's larger than life and amazing in every way, but you got to touch it. You got to smell the smell of the rubber tires in a firehouse. You got to, feel the grit on the tires and feel the cold chrome when you climb aboard this big machine that saves lives. That's what the OC for me has been. It's an environment where people can come in and we're not running a model railroad when you're in this basement. We're running Conrail's Chicago line in a period of growth and optimism on Conrail, an optimistic time in United States history, with a bunch of young kids that are just absolutely thrilled to be part of it. And it's that sense of belonging, I think, that is such a treasure to me. And this is why I'm forever grateful to Jack, not just for the friendship, not just for the memories and everything we've created together, but for the fact that I've jumped into this with both feet and he's jumped into this with both feet, and everything else that's come out of that reaction is fantastic. It's fun. It's exciting. And I do think people feel like they have a stake in what happens here. And for me, it comes down to people. So for Jack to jump in like that and for us to create this together it's absolutely one of the highlights of my life.
So Jack, you were talking about how you feel good about, with these Facebook Live events, and people seem to go away happy. Like, can you give me a short answer of, this has only been happening now for just a few months, not even a year. And I'm interested if you can give me a sense of the satisfaction. I know you're satisfied and it makes you feel good, but I think what you guys don't get, and maybe it's because I've interviewed so many people now, railroaders that I interview, guys like The Spoon and Clem Harris and Adam Pinellas and Emery Lehman and all the guys, Thomas Gazier, all the guys, I know I'm leaving people out, all the guys that are on the road, on the rails, running the equipment. The sense I get from those guys is they love to joke around and kibitz and all that. But as soon as it comes time to operate the machinery, they're like all business. Like, yeah, they'll tell stories and this and that and the next thing, but there's no screwing around. You're operating huge machines and there's just no screwing around. It's a serious business. So, but for them, it seems to be, you guys seem way more intense than those guys. Like, way more intense. The three of you seem like there's something wrong with you.
We're a little bit odd ducks. It's okay. Okay.
But not something wrong with you in a bad sense. Like, as in, you've created something that's it's like you got the guy that's in charge of scheduling, running the railroad. You got the guy that's got a job, he's in charge of all the stations. You got a guy that's liaison between the other railroads and New Jersey Transit, and you guys have this intensity, and yet, like I said, it's like going to the fire station. It's like you guys don't care that I don't know anything. That doesn't seem to be of any great concern to you. So long as the person isn't a complete screw up, you don't really care if they know anything or not. Because you want to tell them about it. So
I think having gone through actual screw ups on real railroads, you learn that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah. We've already proven ourselves to each other, and so
and proven ourselves to ourselves
and to that's probably the biggest piece. Yes.
So. There's no way, there's no failure that's going to, detract from, because we've lived through the failures on the real thing. Hurricane Sandy on New Jersey Transit, for instance. We've lived through horrible, horrible things, fought our way through them, worked with others to fight our way through them. And, there's nothing you can't overcome. So and there's certain things you just have to keep going through. The real railroad has bad days.
So you've both got like 3 minutes. So what are the conversations the three of you have had after your live Facebook events? Like, what's the number one thing, Jack, that stands out in your mind about Facebook Live? You got 3 minutes max. I'm going to cut you off at 3 minutes.
It's about all the screw ups that people didn't notice or no one said anything about. So I think 2 or 3 sessions ago, we had an ELSE. We had a massive train, right? This train's got, a bunch of auto rack or auto parts cars at the front of it. And it's supposed to be a, 50 car manifest. It's supposed to be a huge train. We've got huge power on the front of it. And this thing comes up the hill, comes up the back of the layout up to 282. And one of the auto racks, 10 cars deep, tips over, uncouples, and the last 35 cars of the train roll back down the layout. And where Dave is standing filming, the camera doesn't pick up any of this. Where Dave is standing filming, here comes a train with 4 locomotives on the front. Dave's talking about ELSD. Dave's giving the whole spiel about the train. And 10 cars go by and the train's gone. And what do? You can't do anything. Train rolled through and we kept running it. We just kept going. And the end of the session, it was like, did anybody see that? You're going back through the comments and no one says, gee, that was a short ELSE. Nothing.
Yeah, and so that really,
it's not your 3 minutes. Sorry,
I didn't realize it was a continue.
So I think
I think
figure out after.
Lionel, I heard you.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Okay, go ahead, Jack. Or were you finished?
Yeah, that's pretty much the point.
All right. So okay, so again, that would lead to the intensity that you guys have. It's like you're so paranoid that this train wasn't what is. Like, do you get the sense that you guys, that most modelers don't have the knowledge that you have? Do you realize that?
Well, I would never tell someone they didn't have the knowledge I had. They just have different knowledge.
Yeah. Do you realize that? Do you realize that? Like,
yes,
I have none. I have none.
You also have to realize that people have knowledge that you don't have too, and meet in the middle. What I will say also about that ELSE thing is that, look, we all came together after that and said, well, that's never going to happen again. We're going to figure out how to shorten this train up and redistribute the weight. And, we spent the whole setup night looking at the train consist and picking the cars out and, making sure that doing test runs until 11 o'clock at night on a weeknight to make sure that the next time that train ran, there was not going to be any mechanical failures. So that's another thing the real railroad does is once you have an incident, you go back, you analyze it, you figure it out, and get it secured and get it safe again, so that so that when things go wrong, you don't repeat your mistakes.
All right, Dave, it's your 3 minutes. What is it about this that is during these Facebook Live events that is something like you kind of going, well, I didn't see that, or this is like spectacular or whatever? What is it that sticks out in your mind about these events? You got 3 minutes, go.
The way I look at these things is that they're a microcosm of what the vision for the railroad always has been. And it's ironic because it wasn't even my idea to have these Facebook Live things. As we've talked about, that was Rich Wisniewski's idea. It was his original idea that translated the whole remote operations thing to start with, and that's what gave rise to the Facebook Live. But I think when you look at what we do for the Facebook Live videos, it's what we do for a regular operating session, with the lone exception that the show must go on for the camera, for the audience, more than for the session itself. And I think one of the things that I find most fascinating is that the two of those are actually very similar. So long as the crew that's working with the railroad for a Facebook Live session knows where the camera is, you'll notice that the horn always blows. You'll notice that the bell's ringing. You'll notice that trains are doing the right speed. You'll notice that trains regularly meet in front of the camera. Well, none of that stuff is random. That is all stuff that the operating crew is doing on their own because they know ahead of time where the camera is going to be. They know where the rail fan is going to be sitting. And so if we take a step back from that and realize that all of that stuff is actually planned and executed, I want to focus on the execution part because we've talked about the planning part. But the crew of people that have become regulars on the Onondaga Cutoff, and it starts with Jack, like so much of my life starts with Jack, and Rich, Al Tillotson, Chris Lee, Nick Anshant, John Zelahowski, Ralph Heiss, Tom Schmieder, all of these guys that are regular contributors, Joe Relation, people that are trusted with pieces of what the Onondaga Cutoff operation is. They're trusted unequivocally. And I manage my department at work the same way. And what I love about these Facebook Live sessions is that it is a cross section of the trust that I have in all of these people to do it right the first time. And when ELSE went by with 10 cars, I knew what happened. And I kept talking. Because I knew that the professionals would handle it. And they did. Jack and Rich and Ralph and Tom got together that night and they figured out what they were going to do. They turned off the detector so it didn't keep talking gibberish. They figured out what was going to happen. We finished the Facebook Live. I gave my send off. We cleaned up the mess and had and discussed it and figured out what we could change going forward. So the professionals, I don't get involved in that because my job is the show. My job is talking the audience through what happened. I love that during these Facebook Live things, just like during an operating session and just like in my life, these are good people that jump in with both feet. I have complete faith in them and they're going to do what they do better than I could do it. And that the collaboration is going to be greater. The sum is going to be greater than all of the parts combined every single time. And I'm very grateful for that. I think that's it's a lucky place to be in life.
Yeah. I'm just sitting here listening to Dave talking. What's popping into my head is when we talk about Frank Ellison and his concept of his famous old scale Delta lines in the 40s and 50s.
Sure.
The layout is the stage and the trains are the actors. And that's what you guys are doing. You've built a beautiful stage and you've got a great set of actors doing your show.
Right. And the trains are the moving part and they're sort of an extension, but the actors are the people. It's the people running the trains. It's the people that talk like Conrail talked on the radio. It's the defect detector that Alex Lang built that sounds like a Conrail defect detector, except there was no Camillus detector in real life. Alex pieced together sound bits to make my detector Camillus because that's what I wanted. It fit my geography, and Alex made that happen because he's gifted in that way. He figured out the networking as well. And Nick Anchant with the signals, Jack with the service planning, Rich with the paperwork. In life, you come into contact with people that have gifts from God or the spirit or dumb luck or whatever you want to attribute it to. The bottom line is that there are people that are experts in their field. And I found that if you give them ownership, they're gonna run with the ball and they're gonna make your railroad better than you can make it by yourself. And there's no greater example of that for me than Jack. This railroad would not exist without Jack.
Okay. But that's a different discussion altogether. Is that the people that you need that help you run the railroad?
Yeah, but it's integral on this railroad. It's integral.
But is that your highlight? Is that you have people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 100%. And that we're going to be able to do it again next time because those people are committed, just like I am.
Okay. Well, what happens if all those people? That's a different discussion.
If those people don't participate, the railroad's going to change. It's going to have to change, just like the real one does.
Right. And that is one of the things about, that's about the real railroad too, is it's going to happen whether you're there or not. And it's one of the interesting things about career railroaders. You do get the idea in your head that, oh man, if I'm not here to do this, it's going to go to pieces. Or if so-and-so isn't here to do this, how will we ever survive without, this person in this position or that person being our leader or something? It's still going. And it's still going just fine, and it's interesting. The same guy who handed me the $1 to get my shirt pressed was one of the most humble people, I think, in that respect. Like, you get people they refuse to have a retirement party because they can't imagine themselves as being a person that's that important. They know that the railroad is going to keep going, whether they're there or not. It'll go differently maybe than how it would have gone if they had stayed. But it's still going to go because it has to. The railroad will grow around its weaknesses and on its strengths.
Well, it's time to stop. And this has been a complete screw up. It's been but Bruce, I don't know what to do now. I really don't know what to do.
We close out as we do as normally like professionals.
Do we give these guys another try or?
Oh, I think so.
Really?
Because what we got as far as
we didn't get anywhere.
No. Let's say we got past the first day. We got Jack for mapping and planning. Dave's doing whatever he's doing, and they've built a beautiful layout. They built a beautiful railroad, and now we got to dig deeper into that.
That's the present. Yeah. Now there is right. We could get into the layers.
Here's the notes I had. I wanted to talk to them about. What? Well,
I love it. This is great.
here's the notes I had, Bruce. I wanted to talk to them about designing the track plan.
Yes.
I wanted to talk to them about building the OC together.
Yes.
I had scheduling New Jersey Transit, was just 1 point. I wanted to talk to them about Babby. I wanted to hear Jack's side of that story, because Jack's side of every story is completely different
Isn't it
than
great?
Dave's side of the story.
It's totally true. I love it.
It is like
This was the next interview. We start off with Babby.
Yeah, you could do a whole separate episode on Babby.
Babby's was that absolutely.
no.
There's part 3 done.
No, you guys.
You might as well plan it, because that's as far as you're going to get.
No, because I think in the next episode, which will be the final episode of the 37-part trilogy, there's going to be a time limit on every answer.
I don't know.
I do.
I feel like debating.
What's
And
that?
You feel like running a debate, and when
You might
cut off the microphone and bang the gong or something like that. You know.
I wanted to ask Jack about, has he operated on other railroads, and I wanted to ask them about when the concept of the OC was born. So I mean, there's quite a few other things that we never covered, and the degree to which we cover every single thing. This really literally could be a 37-part trilogy, but that's not going to happen. So the two of you have got to figure out how to shorten your answers.
I think those 6 points or 5 points, knowing those ahead of time would be very helpful. Evil Overlord.
Oh, well, make your notes. Go back.
Seriously?
Go back. Right out your answer.
Seriously?
Yeah. So
No.
that way you can get your answer.
You don't know. You don't know about the two of you designing the track plan. You haven't. You guys are you guys are still stuck back in the 5th grade. And then we found out the whole thing about the Pattenburg Tunnel. You don't need to know in advance. You guys just need to guys need to shorten your answers.
No. Short.
I don't know. I don't know if you get the whole essence of it. I mean, even the one piece, you're asking me what it's like to be in charge of scheduling.
It took you 5 minutes to tell you the guy handed you $1 to get your shirt pressed.
Right, but there's a whole story to that. It's not random.
That's not random. Exactly. I mean, I could tell you.
Let me tell you that story.
That schedule change.
So let me tell you that story.
It didn't happen to you, Lionel. You can't tell that story.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me tell you that story. So at first I worked in mapping, and I first started it with New Jersey Transit in 2004. And then in 2007, I moved to scheduling. And I'd only been there a few weeks. And, in mapping, they had, casual Fridays and everything. And so when I arrived in scheduling, I dressed neatly, but, I was a bit more loosey-goosey than what they were used to in scheduling. And after 2 or 3 weeks, this guy named JJ comes by, and he's a big shot. He was in charge of something, and he looks at me up and down, and he leans in close, and he hands me $1, and he says, "Get your shirt pressed. You look like crap." So yeah, I told that story in 40 seconds.
Yeah, but if you could tell every story like that, then you'd have a bunch of cardboard to talk back to you too.
Yeah, but you guys have so
much. There's no
much
salt and pepper in there. Where's the Tabasco sauce?
But there's so much to cover. You can't. But you
this
can't.
Is what happens with 30 years of friendship.
Yeah, but there's so much to cover. You can't do every story like that, or else nothing happens.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess again, how do you know what the right moments are? I mean, I'll tell you the worst thing that ever happened to me scheduling was getting to add a train. I mean, in the end, my boss and our government and community relations people had to go out to a town hall meeting that was about the schedule changes that I made, because that's how pissed off those people were. Like, it was a nightmare, and it was something we did. We added 1,000 seats for all these people that were overcrowded and on these trains, but this one town was making 2 or 3 extra stops on their way home, and they had a conniption. They exploded. We had to go back and redo it. And that was a really formative experience.
So you told me that whole thing in about a minute.
Well, there you go. We're learning. Hey, I'm not saying we're not professionals. We don't run the podcast here, But we're learning though. We learn slowly, but we do learn. It's important.
See, it's hard when you get digressed off on just describing what the Morris and Essex is.
Bruce, can you give out our email address?
Yes, I would love to. And you know something? Everybody makes such a big fuss about having to be special stuff. You know, I like it short and sweet, but just to please the crowds, tonight I'm going to do something a little different. So pay attention closely.
All right.
Our email address, please let us know what you think, any questions that you have that may possibly get answered, but most likely not. Our email address is modeler'slife. That's modelers with one L like llama, not two L's like llama, @gmail.com.
I like that. And we have a website, amodellerslife.com. If you go there, you'll find out all sorts of things, and you'll see all the upcoming episodes and some of the recent episodes, and you'll see, which I'm sure Jack will have listened to many of them by now. And there's all sorts of, there's the Onondaga cutoff paperwork is on the website. If you just go to you scroll through the what do you call it, the menu, and you'll find the Onondaga. I'm going to look at it right now. Let me go look at it right now. It's on my page. It's under more, and it says Conrail's Onondaga cutoff. And you go there, and there's a little write-up about Dave Abelys, which is 14,000 words long.
The short version.
Yeah. And then there's a map, and there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, all about the Onondaga cutoff. And all you got to do is click on that link. So there's all sorts of stuff to find on the website. And if you want any merch, are you going to get your, Jack, are you going to get an AML t-shirt?
I thought I wanted AML sweatpants with AML printed on the ass.
Yeah, right, you did. But that was
there you go.
But that wasn't the question.
Okay, I'll get an AML t-shirt. Do I have to buy it?
I'm asking you, are you man, is my microphone on, Bruce?
Well, you said get. You didn't say buy. You did say get.
Get.
Sure. Are you going to get an AML t-shirt?
Is that up to you, Lionel?
Get can mean so many different things.
It can. Are you going to get one? It's a yes or no question. You two guys wouldn't know how to. You two guys wouldn't know how to answer yes or no to a question. If you know what? If I was on fire and you guys were a bucket of water, I'd be burnt to death by now.
Yeah, this is 20 years of working in a public agency. Like, I need to know what the words in the question mean.
Yeah, you got to think about that stuff. It's important.
You got to try being self-employed all your adult life and see how easy that is.
Yeah.
So maybe someday Jack will get an AML t-shirt, which is and they're a lot more than just a blue with Onondaga cutoff on it too. They're a lot fancier. There's all kinds of different ones you can get. If you go to Midwest Model Railroad, if you go to the Midwest, can you hear me? I think what was the grade 5 teacher's name?
Oh, Stepniak.
I think Miss Stepniak. I think I understand why she separated you guys now.
Yeah, there you go. So you're just one of them now. That's how that goes.
Part of the empire.
So if you go to Midwest Model Railroad's website, and it's midwestmodelrr.com, and you go to the navigation bar and you click on AML, you'll find a wonderful world of all sorts of AML merchandise. There's hoodies, there's mugs, there's hats, there's T-shirts. Boom. There's all kinds of different designs of T-shirts, not just one design. There's many different designs, many different colors. And let's see, what else do we need to tell them? I think that's just about it, isn't it, Bruce?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I know what I'm going to say at the end of this. Okay, Jack. Are you ready for the end? Do you remember what it is you have to say? Not a chance.
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
It's happy rails to you.
Happy rails to you.
There's no singing. There's no interjecting your opinion. It's just simply happy rails to you with some enthusiasm. Have you got that?
I'll do my best.
A yes or no would have sufficed there too, you see. Do you have that?
I have that, sir. Yes.
It's a good thing neither one of you guys went into the military. Well, Jack, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
happy rails to you.
While in Busted Knuckle, guests of a Modeler's Life podcast stay at the Casa del Sol Motor Court and Inn, where late-night dancing at the Rumba Room is a magical event to be experienced.
It's another Lincoln Homer.
Holy shit, where's the Tylenol?